Hi everybody and welcome to another episode of Gaffer and Gear. Today we're going to talk about the dangers of running convection cooled lights on incorrect operating angles. For example, this light is on its side, so it's not going to ventilate properly and it could cause some internal damage. Whereas this light is upside down, which could make it a potential electrical death trap. Alright, so LED lights have really changed the way I work. I love LED lights. One of the things I really like about them is you don't have intense heat. And one of the advantages of not having intense heat with the majority of LED lighting fixtures is that you can operate them on absolutely any angle whatsoever. Any way you can clamp it, you can use it. That's the case with the vast majority of LED lights. But it is not the case with convection cooled lights. So the most common convection cooled lights you're going to come across are HMI and quartz halogen or tungsten lights. So what is a convection cooled light? Okay, so let's open up this lamp head and have a look inside. Okay, so we've got our lamp or our globe, and that gets incredibly hot. Okay, so there's a lot of heat radiating off that, and that heats up the air around it. Now, hot air rises, okay, so that hot air goes out of the top air vents, and when that happens, it creates a vacuum inside, and cold air gets sucked in through the bottom. So you've got cold air coming in through the bottom and hot air going out the top. That's what's called the convection process. Now, how do you tell if a light is convection cooled or not? Well, your first indication is crap loads of air vents, okay, predominantly on the top and on the bottom. And the next thing to look out for is the absence of any cooling fans, okay, so I'll just open this up again. Okay, there are no cooling fans inside this. So this is totally dependent on convection, on cold air coming in through the bottom and hot air going out the top to keep it cool. Now, one of the problems you can encounter with convection cooled lights is if you have them on certain angles, they won't ventilate, because in order for it to ventilate, the air has to be going in an air vent and out another air vent. So I'll just give you the example here of operating a light sideways like this one. Okay, so I'm going to use the bigger light because it's easier to explain. So on the bigger light, you can see there are air vents up the top, okay, but there are no air vents on the side. So if you had this light operating rotated 90 degrees, the heat would just be getting trapped up here. And the light ends up becoming like an oven. So the problems you can encounter with that, for example, you can reduce your lamp life. The lamp doesn't last as long. You can actually dull your reflectors, okay, because the reflectors are being exposed to too much heat and they lose their silver coating. Other things that can happen, the metal expands more than it should because it's got a lot of heat in there, and the lamp head can actually warp out of shape, and that can affect your flood spotting. You can also crack your lenses, because the lenses are being exposed to too much heat, so you can get a lot of damage happening internally just through not running it on the correct angle. Now, before we go any further, I really should point out that not all tungsten and HMI lamp heads have operating angle limitations. A good example in tungsten is the Day-Day Light 100 or the Day-Day Light 150. That can operate on an XY axis of 360 degrees. A good example in HMI is the RE Pocket Par that can operate on any angle. Now, the most common time I come across lights being used on the incorrect angle is when they're mounted to the end of a C-stand arm like this. So rather than doing it this way, what I'd suggest is spending $10 on a spigot and using the other end of the arm and putting the spigot into the grip head and then mounting the light to the spigot. Problem solved. So that $10 spigot could save you a lot of money in repairs to your light further down the track. Now, the next thing to talk about is your tilt angles. The tilt angles that you can operate on vary from light to light. Some lights can only operate from a 45-degree tilt angle. Some lights can go up to 90 and down to 90. So how you can find out the tilt angles of your lights is to consult the manufacturer's websites and their instruction manuals. Now, on the vast majority of lights made since about the year 2000, there will be a compliancy plate. And on that compliancy plate should be a diagram that shows you the maximum operating angles. Now, one thing to know about as a gaffer is HMI pars. Most HMI par manufacturers claim that their lights can operate to plus 90 degrees and minus 90 degrees. However, when you consult the lamp manufacturers, you'll find out that the lamps can only operate from minus 45 degrees to minus 45 degrees. If you have the light going past 45 degrees, you have too much heat coming off the lamp, passing over the ceramic glue. Now that ceramic glue can become brittle and the lamp can fall apart from the lamp base. Now when I asked one of the lighting manufacturers why they have on their compliancy plate that their HMI part can operate directly down, but the lamps aren't designed to do that, their reply was that you can operate the light pointing directly down for a short period of time. If you go for an extended period of time, you will damage the globe. Alright, so to explain why it's a really bad idea to run one of these upside down, let's talk about convection cooling again. Okay, so remember, cold air comes in through the bottom, hot air comes out of the top. So basically, hot air rises, okay, heat rises. So what that means here is the bottom of the unit is very, very cool compared to the top. Now to give you some idea, this is a 5,000 watt light and I can touch the bottom of it with bare hands. And this has been running for about 10 minutes. However, there is no way I would touch the top. So to give you some idea of just how hot it is up the top, I'm just going to flick some water on it. Okay, so I've proved that the bottom of the light is way cooler than the top of the light. So what's that got to do with anything? Well, these things run off electricity, and electricity has the potential to be really, really dangerous. So you wouldn't want your power cables melting, for example. That is why your on-off switches, your power cables, and if this was a HMI, the igniter pack are down the bottom where things are cooler. So if you've got the light upside down like this, all of this componentry, which should be down here, is now copying lots of heat because all the hot air is passing through it. Now I'm just going to leave you with a story before I go. One of my suppliers sold a whole stack of lights to a studio, and about a month later they got a phone call saying something was wrong with the lights. Could they come down and have a look? And when they got there, all the lights were in the lighting grid upside down like this. Now the biggest concern was the power cables going in. The power cable, which should be down here copying less heat, was copying an immense amount of heat up here. And what had happened is all of the insulator, which is heat resistant, had become brittle and had fallen away. So inside the light here where the cable goes to the switchgear, it was bare conductor, so no insulator at all. The other things that were fascinating with the lights was the reflectors. You could see what angle the light was in the grid because the piece of metal that holds the reflector in place is like an aluminium. So, but when it was upside down, it was copying so much intense heat day after day after day after day that it actually sagged. So it was fascinating looking at all these lights that were on the repair bench and all the reflectors were on different angles. It was fascinating to see that. Other things that were destroyed, the lamp bases, sorry, the lamp holders where you put the globe in and connect, they were all shattered and cracked. They were all destroyed. The flood spot transports, they didn't work properly. They were cable driven and all of the nylon coating, I think it's nylon, that was all burnt off. It was absolutely fascinating to see the damage. Now I've seen a lot of inexperienced people put lights on stands upside down, so I'm going to show you how it happens so you're aware of it if you're doing it. Alright, so the light's usually the correct way up on the ground and then they pick it up and turn it upside down to get it on the stand, and then they plug it in and turn it on. Okay, so if you're fairly new to lighting, just check that it's the right way up. So things to look out for, the writing. Okay, if the writing's upside down, that's a dead giveaway, and you should definitely never have a power cable up the top. All right, that is an absolute giveaway. That's a danger. Okay, now there is one other way in which having a light upside down can be a death trap, and that is if it's raining. Okay, so this light, for example, has a weather protection rating, which means if it rains, any water that lands on top of it doesn't end up inside any part where there's electrics. Okay, so on some of these lights you do get water go inside, but it goes around the inside of the shell and drops out the bottom. It doesn't go on anything that's electrical. However, if you've got the light upside down, then rainwater can access sections of the light where there are electrical components. Okay, so another reason to make sure that you've got your lights the correct way up. Okay, I'm Andrew Locke. See you on the next episode of Gaffer and Gear. Please click like and subscribe, and I'll see you on set. Okay, take care.